Hi, my name is Gabby and today we're going to be talking about the skeletal system. We're going to begin with dividing the skeletal system into two subdivisions. We have the axial system, which is going to consist of the skull, thoracic and vertebrae all the way from the base of the skull down to the coccyx, and then our appendicular system, which will consist of appendages from the shoulder girdle down to the ends of the fingers, and then starting from the hip girdle all the way down to the ends of the feet. So let's start with the cranial bones. We're going to start frontal, right and left parietal. Additionally, we have the occipital. Then we're going to go into temporal, which would be this part going up. And then we have the xiphoid right here. And then going into and then there's the ethmoid, which is inside, and I'll show next, which is the last bone for the cranium. Then we go into facial. We have the mandible. We have the maxial. This is going to be depression, elevation. Then we go into, like I said, the zygomatic is here. Then we have the lacrimals are going to be in here. We have nasal left and right. And then from the inside, you would be able to see the ethmoid would be in here, just proximal from the front of the nose, but I believe it is just superficial of the sphenoid. And then additionally we have the nasal conchae. Let me check this here. And then we have I know we have the palatine, which are the ones that sit right on the roof of the mouth, going more proximal towards the back of the throat. And then the vomer, which would sit in the sagittal plane, just superficial of the palatine bones. So next, from the skull, we can go into our thoracic region. So if we start medially working out, so we're going to start at the midline. We're going to start with the sacrum body, the manubrium, which is the top portion here, and then the jugular notch, and then we have the xiphoid process. Leading into our ribs, we have true ribs here, false ribs here, hyaline cartilage connecting the false ribs at the bottom, and then we have our free floating ribs. Then if we start at the back, at the base of the head, we have the atlas, which would be C1, the axis, which is C2, and the atlas sits on top of the atlas. Then we have vertebrae C1 through C7. C7 has a specific name, like prominence. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it is the most prominent spinous process. We often feel it in the back. It's where that little notch is. Sometimes you see people with kyphosis because they're more head forward, having postural problems, not being able to maintain that cervical curve. So C7. And so then we have 12 vertebrae for the thoracic region. Then after the thoracic region, we go into our lumbar, which has 5 vertebrae. After the lumbar, we go into our sacrum. Our sacrum did have 5 vertebrae when we were in children, but as we go into adulthood, the vertebrae fuse. So now it's considered one. And then the last part of the axial skeleton is the coccyx, which is our tailbone. So now we can start with our upper limb appendages. So let's start at the scapula. So Bill here has, here's the scapula. We have the medial lateral border, inferior angle, intraspinatus fossa. We have the spine. We have the acromion process in the front. There we go. Acromion process in the front. Coracoid process, acromion process. Then in the neck of the scapula, inferior, well, proximal to that, going more anterior, we have the subscapular fossa, and then we have the glenohumeral head, humerus. The humerus will go into the lateral and medial epicondyles. From there, we go into an anatomical position. We have the radius on the thumb side, ulna medially towards the body. Then we go into the hand. The hand consists of smaller bones, which we start medially at the, no, laterally at the thumb. We're going to have the trapezium, the trapezoid, and this is going out more towards the fingers, and then I'll come back around towards the fingers. So then trapezoid, and then let me check my list. We have capitate, hamate, right? Triquetial, and then you can actually feel when you put the wrist into extension, you can feel the pisiform, and then working back towards the thumb, you have the lunate and the scaphoid. And the scaphoid will sit right just slightly medial from the edge of the lateral border of the thumb. And then we'll go into the fingers. So for fingers 4 through 5, it is metacarpals, proximal, middle, distal. The thumb is the only one that doesn't have the middle portion. And then this is going to be the same for both sides. And then we can come back to for lower limbs. We're looking at the hip girdle. We have the ilium anterior, ilium process. We have the fossa. We have the pubis bones here in front, right here also, and then the ischium, which will be posterior for the hip. Let's bring this light in a little better. So hip girdle. Now we're going to go into the head of the femur, and the head of the femur comes right off of the acetabulum socket here. We're going to do greater trochanter right here, which would be this bonius process. Then we're going to go down into the shaft of the bone, and then once we get there, we have condyles again. This is the patella, which is a free-floating sesamoid bone. We have the tibia, fibula, and then the tibia and fibula come together to form what is called the mortis of the ankle, like pestle mortis. They attach at the talus right here, and then the calcaneus, which will be the heel of your foot. Then laterally working medially, we have the cuboid. Yeah, cuboid, and then we go lateral, intermediate, and then medial cuneiform, and then once you get to the end of the medial cuneiform, coming back proximal, you have the venicular. And then we're going to have the same type of formation that in the feet as we did with the hands. Metacarpals, proximal, middle, distal, except for in the big toe, no middle again. We have long bones. This is a hinge joint, ball and socket. We have planes joints here that slide. We have full hip flexion, hip extension, knee flexion is back, knee flexion, fully extended that way, and then pass pedal down for plantar flexion, coming back up for dorsiflexion. And then let's go back to the shoulder. So we're going to have flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, abduction coming back towards the body, horizontal adduction, flexion going chin down, extension, head back, rotation in the transverse plane, lateral rotation, lateral flexion, left and right, and then side bends. Let's see. I think that's everything I wanted to hit. Plane, pivot, saddle. Plane, we have pivot joints, saddle joints. Saddle joints are here. Spinous process, and a practical application for understanding your anatomy fully for me is physical therapy. You cannot be a physical therapist and not have a complete understanding of anatomy and movement, and I'm really excited to going into the muscular system next because this is my favorite. Yeah, I think for all fields going into the health, all genres within the health field need to have a complete understanding of the skeletal system and how it works. Thank you.